Week in review, December 19th, 2022. Wasn't able to film a week in review last week. I had a trip out to the East Coast. I left on Monday, so I was traveling all day. Flew to Fort Bragg, actually Fayetteville, and then from there we drove to Southern Pines. Met up with Chuck Carswell in Fayetteville. Drove to Southern Pines, where we were going to stay for the evening for meetings for the rest of the week. Real quick, I want to thank the CrossFit gyms that I worked out at that weekend, or that week that I was there. The first gym we stopped into was just planning on saying hello and then going back to my hotel to get checked in and work out. But once I saw the workout and wasn't too intimidated by it, essentially I thought it was something I could do and do well at. We worked out there. That workout was establish a 1 rep max bench press. I haven't benched in years, so we worked up to 225. And then it was the 4 rounds. It was NC Fit programming, actually, Jason Kalipa's programming. 4 rounds of run 300, 15 pull-ups, and 12 calories on the Echo bike or assault bike. Good little workout. I enjoyed the class session. I enjoyed the entire from the bench into that, and I was able to. I set a goal of doing that workout with unbroken pull-ups for the 4 rounds, and I was able to do that. So that was exciting. Anyways, went up to Fort Bragg, and we met up with General Donahue. General Donahue is a 3-star general in charge of the 18th Airborne Corps. Earlier this year, in January, I think January or February, I met up with him. I flew out there, and I met up with him. And at that time, he was in charge of the 82nd Airborne. He was a 2-star in charge of the 82nd Airborne Corps or Division. And so I met up with him then for the same reason I met up with him on this trip. We're working a really big project with Apex Path, a good friend of mine, Ben Allen, and Striveworks. Something they've had in the works for a while, and they brought us in, CrossFit. At the time that I met with them in January, it was looking like it was going to be a project that I was going to work on independent of CrossFit. But since I eventually came back, it made sense to keep it to make it into a CrossFit project. And essentially what we're going to do with, not going to go into all the details, but basically we're working with General Donahue and his leadership at the 18th Airborne Corps to implement some one-day CrossFit classes to the third ID out of Savannah, Georgia. So actually Fort Stewart. So we're going to run all these, and he's in charge of, General Donahue out of the 18th Airborne Corps is in charge of 4 different divisions. 82nd Airborne, I think the 101st, 10th Mountain Group, and 3rd ID. We're focused on the 3rd ID for this first go, and we're going to do a bunch of one-day courses exposing their soldiers to the methodology and getting them into the training protocol. General Donahue, via efforts with Apex and Ben and Striveworks, has seen great progress with himself in doing CrossFit and doing the methodology over the last year and a half. And when I flew out there, when I went out and saw him in January, we did a workout together, and he blew me away. He crushed it. And then this time, when I went out on this trip, we worked out together, and he's really strong and fit. He's a West Point guy, and so when people naturally ask, like, so how do you know him, or what's your connection? So I go way back with General Donahue. Back in 2005 time frame, I was at a Navy unit that we have I think they still do it. They do for sure. We have like an exchange program with our Army counterpart. And so from the Navy group I was with, I was attached to this Army unit, and I deployed with this troop from Fort Bragg to Iraq, Al-Assad, Iraq. And General Donahue, who I'm talking about now, at the time was the troop commander for that unit. And so I did a deployment to Iraq under General Donahue. He was the troop commander of the the troop I was assigned to. And what's funny is I was getting into CrossFit at this point, hardcore, and I would work out. We do combat missions almost every night, every other night. In Iraq, the op tempo is really high, and every night when I get back from a mission, I was following the workout of the day. And actually, when we first landed in country and got settled, I remember the first workout I did there, and I almost consider it the first CrossFit workout I ever did. I had dabbled before lightly, but this was the first time on a deployment I said, okay, I'm all in, I'm doing CrossFit now, and I'm following the workout of the day. For a very long time, I watched and I studied and I researched CrossFit before actually taking the plunge completely and following the programming. And I decided to do it on that deployment, on that combat deployment. And the first workout was 5 rounds for time. The first workout, so I'm going to call it the first workout I ever did, CrossFit workout, because it was at that period, was 5 rounds for time of overhead barbell walking lunge. I think it was 25 yards, and then 15 burpees. And when on paper, when I read it, I'm like, okay, this isn't going to be too bad. But then when I did it, it really crushed me. But it's a great workout. I have to retest that one of these days and try it out. I recommend you guys try it out too. So on this deployment, he would so I was doing CrossFit, and he would talk so much shit about it. He was a pretty fit guy from West Point, and he was in good shape. In traditional, he used to play football. Played football at the West Point, and so he would talk a lot of shit when I was doing CrossFit, and I really enjoyed the banter. Another cool story from that deployment. Another guy I know who actually I've been communicating with recently, and he's still at that same unit, basically 16, 17 years later. He decided one day, he was on my team, he decided to jump in with me and do a workout. He's like, hey, whatever you do in the next day, I want to do it with you. And I said, okay, cool. I pull up CrossFit.com, and the workout that came up was 3 bars of death. So Linda, bench press body weight, 1.5 times body weight deadlift, and a 3/4 body weight clean, working down 10 all the way down to 1. I had to scale because, especially with the Olympic lifts, especially at that point, I hadn't done anything like that. But my buddy, Mark, he was very stubborn, and he decided not to scale, and he dove in and did it RX, and that was his first CrossFit exposure ever. And he was sore for a few days after, and he's still dabbling to this day. He still plays with the program. So that was my first exposure to General Donahue. Spent some time with him, went to combat, did a combat deployment with him. Years later, I was out of the military, probably 13, 14 time frame. I went back with Greg Glassman and a small group of trainers to that same unit, and now General Donahue was the commanding officer of the unit. And Greg was going to speak, and we ran into each other at the hall, and it was great to catch up with at the time, not a general, but I'll just refer to him as a general. It was great to catch up. We shared some stories and reconnected. Greg went on and did his lecture at the venue, and we had a very good time. And then fast forward, as he was General Donahue getting exposed to CrossFit and diving into methodology, Ben, good friend of mine, worked with him for years, he told me General Donahue was getting into CrossFit, and I was like, no fucking way. And he's like, yep, he's on board now. He's seeing great results. So then he decided to bring me out in January to talk about basically building out the foundation, January, February, of this program that we're diving into now. So I'm not going to go, like I said in the beginning, I'm not going to go all the details, but it's looking really exciting. We're starting off with 3rd ID, and a lot of potential to really make a massive impact on the soldiers and exposing them to CrossFit and making, giving them the foundation for having a life-changing methodology at their fingertips. And before talking about life-changing, but actually making them near-term much better war fighters and combat prepared for any combat that's thrown their way. General Donahue is an amazing leader and an amazing man. And Google him, look him up. He's been involved in a lot of stuff, a lot of conflicts, plenty of operational experience, combat experience. Um, he's been gone for the last 9 months. He was in Germany with all this Ukraine stuff going on. So he sees the power and the impact of CrossFit and what it can do for the fighting forces, and actually essentially enabling the soldier and equipping the soldier with the necessary um, knowledge to train yourself, to keep your leaders and your peers accountable to fitness and movement. And he sees the impact that we can have, and is excited about layering that in and taking advantage of it. We're excited about the opportunity for sure. So more to come on that as it develops. And this is rolling out quickly. So this all happened very fast, and now we're going to start implementing and doing a bunch of these courses in a few weeks. So I'll be going back and forth to the East Coast, specifically Fort Stewart, a handful of times in January, and really excited about telling you guys and the world and the community more about this as it develops. What else have I been up to? So that was the big thing I wanted to talk about. I went to a shooting competition this weekend, drove 2 hours south to Avenal, and the fog was fogged in, so hung out for about an hour and a half, and then they had to cancel it, and so drove back another 2 hours. On the way back, stopped at Harris Ranch, picked up some good steaks. They have some great steaks there. If you're ever on the 5 and you see Harris Ranch, pull over. And then there's a new shooting range in Soledad that I stopped and checked out. I think they just call it the range. It's actually a really nice complex, very nice setup, plenty of shooting bays. They have a range out to 600 yards, a lot of pistol bays. They're even building a kill house. They have a really nice classroom. So if you're in the Bay Area and you're in this area and you're looking for a place to train, check them out. On that note, on the training note, I'm actually thinking about starting to run some one-day pistol courses here at the ranch for 4 or 5 people at a time, maybe once a month. I've thought about doing this for a very long time, but I'm thinking about committing to doing it and carving out the time. I don't have a lot of time, but this would be an interesting experiment for me to see if I could pull it off with my schedule. The reason I want to do that is because the firearms and the firearm industry is so popular right now, and there's so many new people buying guns. So that's who I'm interested in working with. It's just new individuals who are just getting into shooting, or maybe even want to get into the shooting sports, and just working there. I am not going to get into fucking tactics or any of that stuff you see all these guys doing. I just want to teach people the basics and good weapons handling, and I'll even dive into the sporting side of it. I have a lot of experience there now, but you will not find me teaching a tactics course for civilians. For military and LEO, yeah, I'll dive into that stuff all day long, but for civilians, I won't go there. I'll touch personal defense, basic skills, but not necessarily room clearing and shit like that. All right, so hopefully I'm back on schedule. I'll do another weekend review next Monday. I don't have any trips coming up, so thanks a lot. Thanks for tuning in. If you have anything you want me to address in comment, or you want me to answer or address, put it in the comments. Thanks.